Welcome to the final part of why South Asians die 10 years younger. In the last two parts, I covered the reasons why South Asians have genetics and physiological anomalies that conspire to massively increase the risk of major diseases. One of the most depressing things about this topic is that South Asians not only have the worst risk for disease, but they also have the worst habits that make disease happen earlier and in much worse forms. Dietary habits have a tremendous impact on the primary prevention of and reduction in the risk of development of cardiovascular disease, as well as reducing the risk for recurrence after you've had an event. The components of a South Asian diet are generally considered to be healthy. I'm thinking things like lentils, vegetables, and oily fish, but traditionally, many foods are fried, especially snacks. This means that they're higher in calories, but also that this particular style of high heat cooking leads to bad fats or trans fatty acid, as well as these advanced glycation end products. Both of these things are implicated in causing biochemical and microanatomic alterations that enhance the effect of traditional cardiovascular risk factors. This is known as the high heat food hypothesis. There are also cultural elements where there are often large gatherings and family functions where exposure to these types of foods is frequent and it's easy to graze. Culturally, it can also be seen as rude for someone to turn down food that someone has made for you, making abstinence control quite emotionally challenging and difficult to do. There's not a lot of studies in this area about physical activity in South Asians, but as it happens, there's enough to tell us the punchline. South Asians are less fit and have lower physical activity rates compared with other racial and ethnic minority groups, and most are nowhere near the recommended government guidelines. To be fair though, this can be said for many other ethnicities too. Lack of physical activity is a significant risk factor for many chronic diseases, and there's a strong association between inactivity and insulin resistance, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, cancer, anxiety, and obesity. There's actually a dose-response relationship between physical activity and physical fitness and positive health outcomes. Generally, the more you do, the better you feel, and you will feel in the future. One of the saddest things in the literature is the actual knowledge gap. South Asians just don't seem to understand that both diet and exercise have a significant impact on their risk of disease. When South Asians have been asked in studies about how to prevent heart disease, most don't even mention exercise, let alone do any. Women tend to be worse than men in this regard, and there's reasons why this could be the case, such as challenges with accessing facilities or reluctance to attend mixed-sex gyms or swimming due to concerns about modesty. A really interesting example of this knowledge gap is with the use of cardiac rehabilitation in the UK. Cardiac rehab is an important component of care for cardiac patients. This is help that's given to people who've had a heart attack to help improve function after having had a significant event. However, in the South Asian community, it's commonly underused. Studies to understand why show that patients have a limited understanding of their diagnosis. They have cardiac misconceptions, they have negative experiences with healthcare services, and they have very fatalistic health beliefs. What can I do about my health? And they often cite religious reasons and cultural expectations as potential barriers. The knowledge gap extends even further to tobacco. Studies show that many misperceptions persist regarding the health effects of tobacco products, ranging from smoked, things like hookah and cigarettes, to non-smoked, things like pan and naswar products. Let's be really clear here. If you smoke, this is the major modifiable risk factor to preventing cardiovascular disease, and probably one of the best things you can do for your health. And the list goes on. We focused on the biological and lifestyle factors above, but there are so many others. In one major study, they found that stress and depression at work and home is one of the biggest risk factors for a heart attack in the South Asian community, especially in women. Many South Asian communities in the UK are in areas of deprivation. This increases the risk of disease for many, many reasons. For example, people in deprived areas are often on lower incomes and they may have less access to healthier foods, or increased exposure to junk food, overcrowding, and poor access to open spaces. We know that healthier food is about 3 times more expensive on average than unhealthier foods, and in some parts of the country, for every school, there are about 5 fried chicken shops within a 1-mile radius. It's almost impossible to avoid them. They're more filling and much cheaper than healthier foods too. If you were on a budget time poor and trying to fill your kids up quickly and cheaply, you'd probably get the chicken and chips too. The take-home message here is that if you're over 30 and South Asian, then I would work on the assumption that you're at a much higher risk of having life-altering or ending disease, much of which happens before the age of 50. Oh yeah, one more thing. Acculturation is the process of adopting the customs and habits and beliefs of your host environment by one member of a cultural group, i.e. South Asians, to another. There are 4 different types of acculturation, i.e. the ways in which we integrate. Integration is one, separation, marginalization, and assimilation are others. What really strikes me here is that from a health point of view, whichever process you generally take, i.e. you stick rigidly to the ways of your own culture or even adopt the native customs, lock, stock, and smoking barrel, you're still worse off. The very process of acculturation, i.e. adopting to a novel culture, even if you grew up in that culture, has negative health outcomes, higher rates of poor health behaviors and higher rates of developing hypertension, diabetes, obesity, and heart disease. You're kind of damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. But it doesn't have to be that way. Get checked out, know your health status in more detail, and at the very least, start paying much more attention to eliminating your risk and optimizing how you feel day to day. Check out my video on how to live forever for a primer. If you want more info, get in touch directly. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this mini series. Till next time, stay healthy.